Books make you hope. Books make you dream. Books make you laugh. Books make you scream. This is the Books That Make You show, discussing books with authors and experts, unraveling the inner pages of all the books that help make us who we are. Hosted by Desiree Duffy.
It is time once again for us to gather around the radio, my bibliophiles. Welcome, everyone. This is Books That Make You, and I'm Desiree Duffy, and we are talking about books that make you find your unique truth. We're going deep on this one. What is truth? One of the ultimate philosophical questions of all time. It cuts to the core of who we are. Do you think truth is universal? Do we all have the same truth? Or is it fluid? Is it different from one individual to the next? And does it transcend us as individuals? What if I told you one truth does not fit all sizes? 7 billion people on this planet, each living in their own universe with their own truth. How does that sit with you? Ian Weiner is an investor, a philosopher, and humanitarian. Ian most recently was Co-Head Equities Division at Wedbush Securities, where he left to commit to a year of volunteering around the world and make a difference in other people's lives. He is now on the advisory boards of Drexel Hamilton, a brokerage and advisory firm, and of Bellator Asset Management. He is also the author of the new book, Ubiquitous Relativity. My Truth is Not the Truth. It is a book that invites us to take a leap of faith into the unknown, unfamiliar, and uncomfortable. Ian, hello. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me.
Oh, this is going to be good. I'm excited about this. It really it's such a universal question. It's something that humans have thought of, I think, as far back as we have recorded the thoughts of humans. So can we define what people most often think of as truth? What is it that we are searching for, and why? Why do we humans want to define truth so badly?
Well, I think going back to sort of the beginning of humans in general, we've craved certainty in our lives because certainty has made it easier for us to live. And I think many of the organized religions of the world have some sort of belief system, whether it's the 5 Pillars of Islam or the 10 Commandments, where if we follow those instructions, whatever is supposed to happen in the afterlife that's a positive for us will happen. And so because of that, we believe that what our truth, if we follow the 10 Commandments, for instance, that I can get to heaven. And if I entertain any other idea as being the truth, then that brings into question what's going to happen to me in the afterlife. And so I think we have sought, to surround ourselves with people who think like we think and believe what we believe, because then we don't have to question our own beliefs. They're just constantly reinforced. And so that the truth as I know it, if I'm around people who think like I think, it's a lot closer to the truth as the people around me know it. I think what the challenge is for us in a world like we have today is that we're constantly coming into contact with people who have a different truth than we think, and acknowledging that one is not more right than the other is sort of the key to us connecting with other people. And so I think it's just been our nature to want to be safe, to want to feel like we're in control of different situations. And so for that reason, we've constantly tried to say that the truth as I know it is the truth. And that's the subtitle to the book, is like, just because I see something and experience it one way does not mean that that's the way everybody's going to. And it's common sense. It's not really anything new, but it seems to have taken on a new importance these days because we're so quick to judge others, and so quick to look and if we see something or hear something on the internet to just accept it as truth, that there's a real challenge for us now to question those judgments.
You hit on so much there that I want to just dig in and unpack a little bit. So it's true, since the dawn of time, if we go back 2,000 years ago, we weren't necessarily rubbing shoulders with people who were quote unquote others. So we could live, and societies lived, and religions grew in little bubbles. And because of this wonderful thing called the modern era and the internet and globalization and the ability to fly around the world in 24 hours, we're all connected now. And so we still are clinging to a lot of truths that it seems were fine 1,000 years ago when we weren't really dealing too much with other people. And if we did, it was war, and they're damned to hell, and they're not going to achieve nirvana. They're not going to go to heaven. Name your religious dogma there. And so I think that's interesting, too, that as we evolve as humanity and we grow together, it's important to, like you said, not judge others as much because we have to all live together, right?
Yeah. And it's essential these days because it's so easy for us to have judgments based on the amount of information that's coming to us, that to stop for a split second once a day and actually question one of those judgments, to me, is enough of a difference to see whether we're really going to survive in harmony or not. And to me, that's the key. That's the whole point of this book and its message, is that connection from people to people is at its core what makes us human. And for me to connect with somebody who I don't know, or even my most intimate, relationships, I've got to ask questions about them. I've got to understand why they think something or how come. Because if I don't do that, then I'm simply going to continue to judge them by what I think are the right ways of doing life. And that almost inevitably leads to conflict.
And it seems, too, when you talk about judging others, it's so true on the internet nowadays. If you want to find somebody to disagree with, it'll take you 10 seconds. You can state an opinion, the earth is round, and somebody is going to be contrary to that. And it does seem that we are judging others more severely than ever before, even within factions of ideologies or lifestyle choices or political views, religions, what have you, that are very similar. Even with what we have in the United States, I think it's so sad, the divisiveness that exists now because of the political climate and so many people seeing things differently. But what it boils down to is we are all U.S. citizens. We are all Americans. We are all citizens of this planet. And we have more in common with each other than we have differences a lot of the time.
Well, that's exactly the point. And I appreciate you talking about that because, I talk about this in the book. We have this belief that's constantly reinforced these days that we've never been more polarized and we're so divisive and it's never been like this before. And the reality is that's just not true. I mean, we had a civil war with 1 million casualties. We had situations in Congress before that civil war where Congress people killed each other over their beliefs. And even in the 1960s, you can just see what went on. And it's nothing like we have today. So what I ask then is, why does it feel so bad? Because I don't believe it is that bad. It feels that way because we don't talk to each other, because there's no context, because it's easy to hang out on Twitter and just say the most god-awful things to people from, the comfort of anonymity. When I'm sort of in that Gen X group where, we didn't have that technology for half of our lives. And, I always use the example of Thanksgiving where you could sit around a table and there was always some crazy person, sometimes it was me, who had a few too many drinks, and would spout off the craziest stuff. But you couldn't just unfriend them, right? You couldn't just, you actually had to sit there and listen and ask people questions. And it was just a different way of conversing where people could disagree with each other and yet still maintain incredible relationships. Now, and this was part of the impetus behind writing the book, was that, so many people just continue to tell me about how they just had to unfriend all these people because they voted for this person or they feel this way. And I think that we're sacrificing true connections with people simply because we're unwilling to question our own beliefs, like that maybe we're wrong. And so that's where the timing of this to me is of the essence.
Yeah, I love the timing of this because it is such an important message that you're putting out there. I have to piggyback on what you were just saying, too. Your whole book is about the idea that we all have an individual truth. And it seems that if we were all exactly the same, what a terribly awful, boring world that would be. If we all had the exact same views, the exact same likes, the exact same preferences, because we forget that celebrating our differences and even celebrating the fact that sometimes we're wrong. I know 20-year-old me was wrong about a lot of things. I can look back and say, hey, I evolved, I got new attitudes, I got a new outlook on life. So it's not fair for me to judge somebody who's younger or older or of a different culture from a different country because I have not lived their experience in exactly the same way. And again, I just want to emphasize the fact that we are all different and have different attitudes is something that we could embrace more than we can find a reason to be at each other's throats.
Yes, that is the hope.
That is the hope.
That is the hope, to be clear, yes.
Now tell me a little bit. Let's take a few steps back. I understand that you were raised in an abusive home, and that in many ways informed your worldview. Would you like to talk about that a little bit?
Sure. So, as somebody who was abused physically as a child, I spent a lot of my life in fear, a lot of my life unwilling to step anywhere outside my comfort zone because there was a certain unpredictability that I couldn't stomach. And as a result, I tend to wall myself off and surround myself only with, people I trust and know very well. So meeting strangers was never a great thing for me. And if I had to meet strangers, it naturally required me to either drink or do drugs or do something that would take off that edge. Mm. And that led to a whole bunch of different issues. But I am happy to say I've been sober 6.5 years.
Congratulations.
Thank you. But I spent much of my life oscillating between hating my parents so much that I would have wanted to see them sort of be raked over the coals and cry, and go through every gory detail with me of everything they did. And then I would go to the other extreme where I would try to just say, well, I'm going to forgive them. They were crazy. And because they were crazy and didn't have medication and didn't have help, I can't judge them by my standards. So I'm just going to forgive everything. And the reality is neither of those worked. They both got me to the same place, which was still this constant yearning for some kind of coming out in the wash, some kind of cathartic meeting like they have in the movies sometimes where, my parents would admit everything and we'd have this great relationship and we'd move forward. And then the philosophy of ubiquitous relativity and my work in this book started to really impact me because here I was, proclaiming that each of us lives in our own universe and has our own truth. But at the same time, I was still trying to somehow get my parents to see things my way. And it wasn't until applying this way of thinking that I realized that, no matter what, my parents are never going to remember these experiences like I did. And that's okay. And it was when I got to that point that I accepted that my life changed. I no longer was chasing this invisible ghost about trying to figure out some way to punish them and get them to see everything my way and atone for their sins. The reality is, I have a relationship with them. I have it on my terms. But I have no illusions about trying to somehow get this to resolve itself based on what my memories are. And that to me has made the difference in sort of the one thing that's worked, with sort of getting to the other side of an abusive childhood.
And does this tie into where you say it's an illusion that people see the world in exactly the same way? Because that's the assumption that your parents and you saw the same world, but that's the illusion, right?
That is the illusion, because as a victim of abuse, there's probably no kind of person who's been through that who doesn't expect that the world, especially your abusers, are going to know what they did to you. And to accept that they either don't, or their vision of what happened, their truth, could be completely different than mine. That's the only thing to me that shows that, yes, it is an illusion. No matter how bad I want it to be, no matter how much I want everybody to see the world the way I see it and acknowledge the things that I think are true as truth, it's just not ever going to be that way. And the two variables that are what makes that happen are we each are genetically different. That's a fact. Some of us are colorblind. Some of us are nearsighted. Some of us hear well. Some of us don't. And we each have unique emotions attached to those senses. And it's like, you talk about Thanksgiving and it's like, great, I could smell cranberry sauce and you could smell cranberry sauce, and you may have great memories of Thanksgiving and I may have been a horror show for me. And so just that smell can send us off in two different directions emotionally. Now, you may say, well, how could I not like Thanksgiving? What's wrong with me? Mm-hmm. But if you don't ask the question, then you're basically stuck and you don't have an answer. And so that's what this is about. It's about saying that it's okay for two people to experience what they consider similar things and have completely different reactions, and no one is more right than the other. And the only way we're truly going to connect with those people is by actually asking them, well, why don't you like Thanksgiving? And just by that question alone, there's a deeper connection that's formed, and an understanding of each other. That to me is what, at least my life and what I view as important to me, is all about.
And that's what you mean by that, is the second illusion, that people will react emotionally to their senses in the same way. And I appreciate the fact that you break it down into something so simple. Ask other people. Ask them why something is setting them off or they don't like something. What a simple and elegant way to approach it.
Well, and it ties into the current state of affairs that you were describing, which is, if you disagree with me on Facebook or anything, and you're quote unquote a friend or a connection, what is the harm in me asking you why you think something? Mm-hmm. Like, what do I have to lose? Because maybe I'll learn something that changes the way I think. Maybe I won't, but at least I may understand why this person thinks what they think. And maybe that affords me the opportunity to keep them in my life. And then the other thing, which is even more crazy, and I tell people all the time, it's like, if I really believe strongly in what I believe, isn't the way to make those beliefs happen is to actually talk to people who don't believe that and actually try to convince them? And the only way that happens is through engagement. It's not by unfriending people. And so that's what, I think we can each do to just make things a little bit better on the margin.
Now, let's be honest. How practical do you really think your philosophy is, though? This seems so simple, and it seems like it should work, but is it practical? Is it too radical for some people to grasp? Have we lost hope, I guess? I mean, have we gone too far? Are there going to be a bazillion blow-ups at Thanksgiving dinner happening all over the United States, and it's because people will not want to embrace such a philosophy?
It's totally possible. I mean, all I can say is my experience is it's one pause on one judgment a day. That's it. It's not some radical, I'm going to start walking on water. And it's really not even a new philosophy. It's just a crystallization of sort of what I think it helps us connect. So it's one judgment. That for me is what the goal is. It's nothing more than, I use the example of a couple years ago when I was on the beach with my wife and our dog, and some woman comes up to us with her 2 kids, and the kids are playing with a dog, and we start talking, and she mentions that she homeschools her kids. Now, I'm sitting there, and the first thing that comes into my head is, oh my God, these kids are going to have, all kinds of problems. They're not going to have any social norms, all this different stuff, right? Mm-hmm. Now, because of ubiquitous relativity, I stopped for a second and said, you don't know the first thing about homeschooling. You don't know a single person who's ever been homeschooled. You know nothing. So why not ask the question? Nobody's saying that I have to all of a sudden think homeschooling is the greatest thing ever. But by pausing on that one judgment, I'm able to keep this person potentially in my life and learn something. But that's what's required. It's actually saying to myself, well, wait a second, Ian, you don't know what the hell you're talking about. You have no experience whatsoever. You're just making this judgment based on who knows what as the law. And as a result, you just cut people right out of your lives before there's even a chance. And so that's what this is. And I have 5, bunch of exercises at the end of the book in the last part, because I do believe solution is what matters. And it's all about, how do I expand my comfort zone? How do I do different things that will allow me to connect with a greater group of people? Because the more connections I can make, the more likely it is that my life is going to be more full. And so it's all about doing things that you don't normally do. And it's not like jumping out of a plane. It's something as simple as, hey, I watch CNN every night for 4 hours. What would happen if I watched Fox News for 1 week during those 4 hours, and vice versa? Mm-hmm. Is the world going to stop? Probably not. And while you may never want to watch Fox News again, wouldn't it be interesting to see where a lot of the beliefs that you hear from friends and from other people that you suddenly can't believe, like where they come from? And so to me, it's little things like that. Like, oh, I've never tried vegan food. Okay, well, I have 2 choices. I can either just run with my assumptions on what vegan means and what it means about people who are, or I can actually go out to a vegan restaurant and try it. And while I may never want to eat vegan again, at least now I have a shared experience. At least now I have the ability, when I meet a person who is vegan, to understand, okay, this is what's on the menu. And okay, I can sort of understand why this could be appealing. And maybe then I don't just cut this person out of my life when I hear they're a vegan. And so that's the kind of stuff. To me, it's as simple as driving a different way to work. It's all about, how do I put myself into a little bit of discomfort so that I can connect with more people.
I love this theme of pausing judgment. And you also say that there are classic novels that delve into that. Can you explain that a little bit more?
Sure. I mean, I think if one looks at many of the great novels, there's a character arc where a person who has been conditioned to think one thing absolutely, challenges those beliefs. And to me, this is, when somebody says, oh, hero, the word hero, right? A lot of people think of veterans and firefighters and police officers, but that I believe is true, but I also believe it's equally as heroic to question something that you've believed for most of your life, and admit that, well, wait a second, maybe I don't know what I'm talking about. And I think, Huck Finn is probably the greatest example where, you have a white kid with a slave who's been brought up to believe in slavery and then spends time with the slave, Jim, and then decides, you know what, to hell with it. And is not going to turn Jim into slave owners. He's not going to turn him over. And instead forms his own belief system based on his experience. And that to me is sort of the arc of life. And that's the opportunity we get every single day to do. And so I think when one looks at classic characters, my favorite book, For Whom the Bell Tolls, is all about, a mercenary who really only believes in kind of fighting this war, to suddenly getting so attached and falling in love that he's able to actually feel some sense of emotion when he's getting ready to die to save these people. And so when I look at, any Shakespearean every character that I have admired in books goes through some kind of test where they actually have to question everything they thought was true. Mm-hmm. And to me, that's the beauty that we have each day is we can do it. It's hard and it's uncomfortable and it requires some, thinking. But when it's done, to me, it's just incredibly rewarding.
Right. It's easy to sit on the sidelines, be angry, be judgmental, and be stuck in your own beliefs. The hard thing is doing just what you said, pausing judgment and breaking out of your comfort zone.
Yeah.
So tell me, who do you think should be reading this book?
Well, I don't want to say it should apply to everybody, but I think that there's an opportunity for people in sort of who go through midlife feelings about purpose. And so for myself, who's 46, I have gone through this crisis of sort of what the purpose is of all this. And I think a lot of my friends are in the same boat where, they've raised children or whatever it is. And they feel like, okay, so what else is out there? And anybody who's looking for a connection with other people, this philosophy can help. It may make a difference. I'm not a coach. I don't have the answers. This is what's worked for me. It works for me today. It may not even work for me tomorrow, but it's made my life more fulfilling. I have learned more about people and close friends and people I haven't talked to in 20 years and have had the most meaningful conversations because of this book, that it's led me to believe that there's a place for this in everyone's life. But really, as people sort of think about like, okay, I've lived, a lot of time and I've learned a lot of different things and what's next? And I think there's an opportunity here to kind of get people into our lives so we can do it together, as opposed to feeling like we're sort of on our own in this kind of false lone wolf kind of narrative.
Yeah. And where can people find the book online? Where is it available?
It's available on Barnes & Noble, and it's available on Amazon. And if you have really enjoyed my voice this half hour, there's an audiobook I recorded as well that's available on Amazon.
Ooh, I love that. I am a big audiobook fan, so I'm going to go and use up I just got a new credit. I'm going to go use that. Tell us, are you working on anything else? Do you have another book in the works, or what projects are you involved with right now?
So I spent my first 2 years on Wall Street working on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange. It was a crazy time in 1996, but it was one of the few environments I've ever worked in where people from all different walks of life somehow worked together, yelled and screamed at each other during the day, and then were able to go out and have a drink after the market closed like nothing happened. And those environments simply don't exist very much anymore. And so in line with my philosophy, it's a book about how a community can exist with people who are incredibly different and don't agree on anything. But for the sake of the community, people do a greater good. And so that's how the philosophy ties in. And it's, a funny recollection of, it was a crazy place. And I had a lot of fun memories. And so it's sort of a comedy, but, really, talking about sort of what the floor of the New York Stock Exchange sort of symbolized and how that place is never coming back. There are opportunities for us to have a similar type of community, that could make things better for us.
I love that. That sounds like something to look forward to. So where can people find you and follow you online? Are you on social media, website?
I'm on social media. My website is ianweiner.com, and I blog. I'm on LinkedIn. I am on Facebook and on Instagram. And I do try to write an article once a week, some kind of thought piece on different issues or different things as to how this philosophy has kind of hit home for me in different areas. So, and I'm, my email is ian@ianweiner.com, and I'm happy to have new connections and talk to people about this or anything else.
Wonderful. Ian, thank you so much. I enjoyed talking with you today. Thank you.
Thank you, Desiree.
And once again, everyone, my name is Desiree Duffy, and this has been the Books That Make You show. And if you would like to find out more about other books that make you exactly who you are, then visit our website. It's booksthatmakeyou.com. We do lots of bookish giveaways and have articles, interviews, and you can also find archives of past Books That Make You shows. And you can also follow us. We are on Facebook and Instagram. Until next time, please, all of my bookish buddies, enjoy every single book that makes you who you are.
The executive producer for Books That Make You is Desiree Duffy. Produced and sound mastered by Phil Giangrande. Engineering by Dave Nabox. Social media and promotion by Bree Sweeter. For more, visit booksthatmakeyou.com.